Welcome to another Wichita Toy Trading Cup Lionel product review. I'm Zachariah. Behind the camera we have Chris, and today we're going to take a look at the American Flyer Nickel Plate Road Berkshire number 759. A little bit of history on the Nickel Plate Road 759. The locomotive was built by Lima Locomotive Works in 1944 for the New York, Chicago, and St. Louis Railway, better known as the Nickel Plate Road. The locomotive was used until 1959 when it was retired and went into storage. It got purchased by another individual and kind of moved around. Eventually ended up at Steamtown in Pennsylvania, and then it was restored by another individual in 1968 and was used through 1969 all the way up until 1977, pulling some excursion trains and a couple other deals for Steamtown and the individual that financed the restoration of it. And today it still sits at Steamtown in Scranton, Pennsylvania. A couple of the general features on this locomotive: it has a LED headlight, very bright headlight. The locomotive has the FlyerChief control operation, which allows it to be ran with the FlyerChief remote that comes with the locomotive, the universal orange remote from Lionel, or with a transformer and some track. And this engine also has Bluetooth, so you can also run it with your phone or any other smart device with Bluetooth that can download the LionChief app. The locomotive also has a speed control, so it stays very steady, going up grades and downgrades and so forth, along with the Rail Sounds RC and a synchronized fan-driven smoke unit. Looking on the front of the locomotive, as usual, we see a bunch of molded-in details with these FlyerChief engines. That is supposed to be a coupler. I've yet to understand how that is, but it's been pretty standard for years on the O-scale market. We have a nice-looking cow catcher up there on the pilot. Nice little molded-in stirrups down here, and some more molded-in details. Ladders going up either side of the boiler, and a little bit more underneath the boiler. On the front of the smoke box, we have a nice bright LED headlight. These number boards are not illuminated, but that headlight is fairly bright. There's again a number of molded-in rivets and so forth details on the front of the smoke box. Looks really nice. And right here in the middle, we have a little separately applied bell, so it is loose and even has a little clinger detail on the inside of there. Looking on the side of the locomotive, again we have more molded-in details. These all look really nice. We have a handrail that runs all the way down the length of the boiler. We have some sand piping, piping details that take the sand from the sand dome down to the driver. Some molded-in throttle linkage and piping and so forth. Right up front here we have some legible builder's plates from Lima. Moving down, we have again our wonderful looking running gear, and on all of our drivers we have a nice looking white wall that goes around the outside edge. Again, more basic details, not a whole lot, but it still looks really nice. Okay, we move back a little. One thing I did forget to mention, right up here on the side of the sand dome we have a nice crisp NYC and STL. That's our little hint onto the Nickel Plate Road's actual name, the New York, Chicago, and St. Louis Railway. Sorry. Back here by the firebox, we have a number of stay bolts and rivet details on the firebox. A basic-looking trailing truck, not too bad. Some little bitty lettering on the front of the cab here. A nice crisp 759. There is no plastic window inserts on the cab, or even any engineer or fireman figures. Kind of odd. We have again more rivet details all the way around the side of the cab, and a little side step there. Now looking on the top of the locomotive, right up front here we have our little detail for the feed hot water heater. we have our smokestack, and as usual, to add fluid, we just poured the fluid directly down the stack into the smoke unit. Moving back, we have some molded in detail right here, right behind the stack. Moving back, we have a nice looking steam dome, our sand dome with some nice sand filled caps on the top, a little area with our pop-off valves, another little detail back here. There's some rib detailing from the boiler jacketing all the way down the top of the boiler. And back here on the top of the cab, we have a bunch of rivet detailing, some molded in details for cab vents. Again, they're molded in, so it's not like they actually open or anything. And on the very back here, there's these two little nubs, and I'm not really sure why they're there. I believe it's because it might be from the Polar Express tooling. They originally had the Berkshire tooling for the Polar Express, and that would be to be able to put the little people that come with the Polar Express set. Just my thoughts, it could actually be there for a reason, I don't know. Now looking on the inside of the cab of the locomotive, as we can see, it's some of the, again, basic detailing on the back head. There is no engineer or fireman figures, as I said earlier. It's kind of odd. I've seen that on just about everything now. And right down here on the bottom, we have our locomotive end of the FlyerChief Plus tether. Looking on the front end of the tender, right here we have our receiving end of the FlyerChief tether. We have a number of more molded in details, a couple little doors here and so forth. Not bad looking there. Moving down the side of the tender, again we have our kind of a basic molded in side frames for the trucks. Doesn't look too bad. A number of molded in rivets all up and down this tender. That's full of them. And a nice crisp nickel plate road down the middle. And again, our little hint on nickel plate road's actual name, the New York, Chicago, and St. Louis Railway. Now looking on the top of the tender, right up front here we have our molded in metal coal load. Again, it's just metal molded in. It still doesn't look too bad. Moving back, we have some molded in water hatches back here. A little step there that's not too terribly molded out, and some handrails that go along the sides at the top of the tender. Now looking on the back of the tender, right up front here we have a kind of a lens cut out for a backup light that doesn't actually work. We have us a little ladder that lets you get to the top of the tender. Our electrocoupler down here on the bottom. Nice crisp 759. Right underneath that backup light, there's little bitty letters that say 2,200 gallons and 22 tons of coal. Now we're looking in between our engine and tender, and we have that wonderful FlyerChief tether. Same thing they use on the FlyerChief Plus engines. Again, this is a really simple tether. It works really well. All we got to do is pick up our locomotive end, kind of drop it into our tender, and not do what I just did. Try that again. Just excuse my big hands. And just kind of pull up on our tender end. And just like that, we have made two connections. We have our electrical connection for the tender. The tender does not receive any electrical power from the track. It receives all its power from the engine. And our mechanical tether, of course, so we can pull all our cars. Okay, and again, I don't have a S-scale engine cradle, so I'm just going to kind of hold this. On the underside of the locomotive, we can see right up here on our pilot, always remember to put some oil right where those axles go into those bearings, and as always where those axles go through the metal frame all along the drivers, and again back here on the trailing truck where those axles go into those plastic bearings. It's always a good idea to also put oil on our sidewall screws. Not a whole lot going down here on the underside of the locomotive. If I kind of move our trailing truck out of the way, we can see we have our chuff on-off switch, which is our background sounds. So if we turn that off, our whistle and our user announcements will all still be whatever volume we got it set at. And over here we have our smoke unit on-off switch, and on the other side we have our transformer remote switch. So that lets us go in between the remote that comes with the engine, or the universal remote, or the Bluetooth app, and just switch it over to just the transformer and just use a regular conventional transformer and track. And now looking on the bottom of the tender, again, always a good idea when you get this engine new to put a little bit of oil where those axles go into the metal bearings. Not a whole lot going on the bottom side of the tender. Back here we have our electrocoupler, and right kind of back up underneath here is our speaker from the sound system. Right here in the middle we have a bunch of wonderful government FCC labelings. Alright, now we got power to the track. Go ahead and turn on our remote. When our engine starts up, we can check out our sounds. Here's the whistle. Very quick responding whistle. Here's our bell. And our crew talk.
This is the operator. Please hold at your location. Roger. Standing by.
To fire our rear electrocoupler, we'll hit our shift key and then our bell button, which would be our rear coupler. And our rear coupler fires. And to adjust our volume with the remote, we can just hold our shift key and then just turn the throttle. We'll turn it back up. What's really nice is we can let go and it won't take off, so we have to turn this back to neutral. Give or take. See, that's what happens. You go past neutral and then it starts moving. Alright, now we got the engine started up. Let's take her for a spin around the layout.
You are cleared to depart on signal indication. Thank you much. Are we clear through the diamond? Clear through my limits. Are we still clear all the way? Keep rolling out. Standing by.
Alright, now that we've taken the engine for a spin around the layout, as you can see, that smoke unit works wonderfully. Again, I think that's these FlyerChief engines have wonderful smoke units in them. I don't know what Lionel did any different, but I think they work great. Again, that headlight, a really bright headlight, looks wonderful on the front of the Locomotive. Again, a good all-around engine. Chris, you have anything else to add?
I agree with you on the smoke unit and the headlight. I'm impressed with how much output the smoke unit can put on these little tiny locomotives for the size of them. But my favorite part overall is the white paint around each of the wheels. It really impresses me with how clear and crisp and nice that paint job is.
Alright, a couple last things to add with this engine. This was last cataloged in Lionel's American Flyer 2016 catalog. The MSRP on this locomotive is $350. If you go through any good Lionel dealer that may still have this locomotive, you might get a pretty good discount on that retail price. Be sure to check out in the description on this video. I'll leave a link to Lionel's website so you can see anything else Lionel has up on this locomotive. This concludes our review of the Lionel American Flyer FlyerChief 284 Nickel Plate Road, Berkshire, number 759. Be sure to like us on Facebook so you can get all the notifications of our open hours here in Wichita, Kansas, and other train shows around Wichita area that we'll be attending. And also make sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you get the most recent notifications on product reviews and running train videos. Thanks for watching.